Alright, so hi guys. A little early morning for me to be recording this audio, but this is now my third time recording the audio because I don't know, the file just kept getting corrupted or my audio was just so unable to listen to. Great grammar, but it's a Michi video, so what do you really expect? Plus, it's a rambles, StoryTime thingy, and so I also hope the echo isn't that bad. For some reason, it sounds worse for me today, but it also could be because it's the morning, but nothing much I can do. So, anyway, we're going to be talking about my worst art class experience I ever had. I really don't want to call it like my art class horror stories, because compared to a lot of people, this is a very, very different kind of experience. And not to be like, ooh, so original, but like, I didn't have douchebaggy teachers. I didn't really have douchebaggy students. This has to do entirely with budget cuts. And this has to do with the fact that I also worked in a public school system for 2 years right out of high school, and I learned a lot about how budget cuts can fuck up somebody's life. So let's just get right into it. First, a little context though, because you guys know me, I like supplying context because context is something is important. All right, so back when I was in high school in California, I don't know if this is still true, but you needed to graduate. Not your GED, but to graduate high school, basic high school, you needed at least 2 years of a foreign language or theater. You needed, or 3 years of an art to graduate. Sorry, I had to look at my little, my paper ASMR real quick, so I have my notes here. You had to have one of those, and as I have openly stated in previous videos, I was an idiot in high school. Mostly my sophomore year. My freshman year, I had a lot of really messed up issues going on at that time. And a lot of mental stuff going on, a lot of family issues at home. And so I really did not care about school at the time. I just fucking didn't. I didn't care. I had to deal with a friend getting put into a hospital. I had to care about having a stalker. I had to care about my family life falling apart. It got better, but that year was just complete shit. And so, as I've openly stated, I didn't do dick that year. I didn't pass anything. I didn't drop out, thank God. But I almost did. Because I was just so, I had so much other shit to worry about. So I fucked up in my drama class and my foreign language class, which actually really sucked because the issue was I really liked drama. I always wanted to be in a play. I know it's a silly thing, but after a certain incident happened to me back in middle school, which I talked about in a recent live stream, I was traumatized and I didn't want to do art anymore. I actually didn't. I stuck strictly to reading and MS Paint edits of Naruto screenshots back then, and even that was rare. So the fact that drama didn't work out was because it was, on top of everything else, it was very cliquey, and my drama teacher didn't like that. And it wasn't even cliquey in a douchebaggy way where people wouldn't talk to each other or make fun of each other, but it was cliquey as in it was always the same groups doing the same stuff, and people wouldn't deviate, and it was kind of irritating. But same for my foreign language class, just didn't work out that well. I also had my first relationship crash and burn that year. I should say my first serious relationship, because I was still a child. I was technically 14. So right before my sophomore year, my counselor called me in and was like, "Hey, you need to pick an art class, some kind of art class, or else you're not going to graduate." And I couldn't take our graphic design class because you had to take computers that year, and I didn't take computers because I thought taking computers was stupid, because I already knew a lot about computers. So he was like, if you want to graduate, you got to take an art class for 3 years, for the last 3 years of high school. And I remember being okay, fine, whatever. I had friends take Art 1, And they told me how they bullshit through. So I really didn't want to do art. I really didn't. It was still a very, very fresh wound, especially since I was like 14 turning 15. And so I kind of wanted to graduate though. And that was when I had the slap in the face. And after summer school, that really changed me. So sophomore year, I had my first art class and I really liked it. It was actually really nice. My teacher was really funny. He and his wife were very, very hipstery. So what would happen is I learned a lot. I learned a lot in the art 1 class, and I actually got excited. I excited to take painting 2 and drawing 2 because we didn't really have like an art 2. I probably could have taken studio art, but if I had, I wouldn't have met my best friend. So I'm happy about that. So again, and then junior year, same thing. I did painting 2 and drawing 2. No. So sophomore year I did art class. Junior year I did painting 2 and drawing 2. And I loved it. I had a great time. I'm like, wow, this is really fun. But I was also a little disheartened because when I talked about, cartoons in my stories, my teachers were very much not supportive of it. And it is just a product of the times because now my brother has friends in art classes. I have friends who were in high school who had art classes. And they talked about how, I have an animation class, and I have a digital painting class, and I have this and that, and I have, all of these really nice, intro to Photoshop classes. And I'm sitting here like, oh, fuck, I kind of feel a little cheated. I didn't have any of that. And I was taught, unless you worked for a studio, or you did gallery shows. Excuse me. Ooh. You weren't an artist. That was the only kind of into jobs you could get. Oh, I'm wrong. Or be a teacher. And it was very, very disheartening because while I loved those classes and I had a lot of fun, so much of it was copying and not referencing. I say copying because we had to do, I forget what the technical term is, but the best thing I can call it is grid formatting, if anybody knows what I'm talking about. It's where you would take a photo of something or someone else's work. My teachers made us do this. And we'd have to make a grid over it and then make the same grid on a bigger piece of either cardboard, parchment paper, Bristol board, and then transfer over the sketch line for line, shade for shade on 2 bigger pieces of paper. And I remember being like, I don't really like doing that. I was good at it. Surprise, surprise. Because I'd done it for 2 years prior to that. But I was like, I wanted to make my own stuff. Or I really enjoyed, there was one painting project we did where it was grid format, but we had to fuck with the grid. It was really fun. We had to warp and mess up pictures, and I was like, see, that's okay, because by the time half of us were done, it looked drastically different. It didn't even look like the same picture we had anymore. I might actually, if I ever get into painting again, I think I might do that, so that way you guys can see what I'm talking about, because those were really, really fun, and I loved doing them. Binks, mommy's trying to make a video. Can you not scratch right now? Sorry. But then my senior year came around. And for the first time in my life, I took an AP class. I took 2. I was super excited. I was like, oh my God, this might be my calling, I'm actually taking an AP class. I can get college credit for this. And So I took 2 AP classes and 1 studio art my senior year. Also, my senior year, I had to, and this is important, I had to take online school and an ROP. And the ROP, I did not get home until at least 10 o'clock at night, most nights, because I was still behind in credits. So in working terms, I would probably be working at least 18-ish hours a day. And that sounds drastic, but it's really true because I almost spent no time at home. I spent almost no time with Cody. I had almost no time with my friends. I was focusing on school because I had to dig myself out of a hole I put myself in. And so that's also very, very important for what I'm going to be, for the whole point of this story, the whole 9 minutes of me bringing context to it. So I was really excited, and in my AP drawing class, we had a teacher. I'll call her Miss Hipster, not in a bad way, but she and her husband were uber hipsters. It was actually really funny. And so Mrs. Hipster had a class of like maybe 10 people, and that's a high maybe for the AP drawing class. And we all got along, we all picked our focuses, everything was great. This all happened literally on the first day of school my senior year. And so that was all happening, and then my AP painting class was my last class of the day. And I was also excited because I got into it with a couple of my old friends at the time, who ironically enough I don't even talk to anymore. And we were all excited, and it was also like about 10 people, give or take. And no, it wasn't even 10. No, it wasn't even 10 people. It was less than that. Because I'm wrong. Because it was about like 4 people taking AP painting and about 6 or 7 of them taking painting 3. Because we had painting 3 and AP painting. And so it was a very small class. But I didn't mind that because like my teacher didn't mind it either. Everything was happy. And she was getting through the syllabus and explaining our focus for people who didn't have, AP drawings. It was pretty much the same thing. And then the principal comes in with like a group of kids. God, it was so vivid in my mind because it was so weird. I remember we thought like, oh, is the school evacuating? Like, what the hell's going on? And these were kids from every grade. Like, it wasn't just seniors. And they came in, and the principal was like, okay, go find seats. And we were all like very confused. We're like, what's going on? And so we all kind of like got like dead quiet. Same with the students who came in. And Mrs. Hipster, went up to the principal and was talking to him and was like, hey, what's going on? And he pulled her into this like side room, because the art classes were all like 3 rooms kind of conjoined, and it was in one of those middle rooms. And she closed the door, but they were yelling very, very loudly so everybody could hear it. Because we were all dead quiet. No one was laughing. No one was thinking this was funny. And it was, I don't know, in that moment, it was something very nice knowing that like people weren't joking around. People weren't being assholes about it. And so, long story short, the principal had told Mrs. Hipster that because of budget cuts, these kids did not have a final period. And they needed a final period, or else he was going to cut AP painting. He was going to cut painting 3. Because he was like, we can't afford to have a class if only like 10 students are going to take it. We can't afford that. But in the same day, we had AP drawing and drawing 3. And people took those fine. Those weren't an issue. We didn't have the principal come in then. And so my teacher, Mrs. Hipster, had no say. So we had to take in these kids who had never taken a drawing class before, who had no idea what painting techniques were, had no idea pretty much anything when it came to art, and almost none of them were interested in it either. And here's the kick in the teeth. The principal told her on the first day, if all of these kids don't pass, we're cutting your class. And I remember she tried fighting it. We all tried fighting it. And even the kids who were in the class tried fighting it because they didn't want to be there. It wasn't even a douchebaggy thing. I remember that was like something like one of the best feelings. Was they're like, well, wait, we don't want to take a painting class. I would rather take a class I can use or be interested in, but there was no room. There was no room because, while we had to make room for our second freaking football field being built. Because, yes, my school was very much a sports school. We had a soccer field, 2 football fields, a stadium, 2 basketball courts, an Olympic-sized pool, but, budget for an arts program, no. We only had, in my entire school, 3 art teachers. 3 in my entire school. Oh, God, it was so upsetting. It was so upsetting because my teacher had no choice. It was that or she would lose her job when she was a really good teacher. And so what would happen, and why it was so disheartening and why it was so unmotivating, especially with everything else going on in my life at the time, I just kind of gave up, and honestly I bullshitted through it because she didn't care that year. The other students didn't care that year. She had to pass everybody. She was told point blank in front of everybody, I have to pass people. And so I remember I did about 2 projects. I did 2 projects in my AP painting class because I was so angry. Because here was something I was so excited for. I was so happy for, with everything else going on in my life. And we'd have people who, the day before a project was due, literally throw some acrylic paint on some cardboard, sign their name on the back, and turn it into the teacher still wet. And we would watch as Mrs. Hipster would have to pass that student because they would take her job away. They would take her class away. And it really sucked because after a while she started giving us a grading curve to try to motivate the AP kids, because you're supposed to submit your portfolio to schools, you know? So we only had, I think, about 2 or 3 who actually took the class seriously because they actually wanted to go to art school and wanted to do this. Well, I'm sitting here like, fuck, I just want to graduate. So I talked to Mrs. Hipster and I told her about what was going on in my life. And she was like, well, I have to pass you anyway, so it'll be okay. You'll do okay. You know, but I'm sorry, this is your senior year. And it sucked. There's no other way to say it. It really, really, really got us upset. I remember like 2 of my friends who were really excited for the class dropped it after that because they're like, fuck, if I can do this, I'll just go home. Why am I here? Because they just wanted to do it just for fun. They didn't want to go to art school. They didn't want to, have an art career. And it was, God, it made me so fucking angry. And I remember, like, we tried going to the district about it. I tried getting one of Cody's dads, who's a teacher, involved in it because he knew it was wrong too. And nothing was done about it because they were like, oh, well, if not enough people are taking the class, we can ditch it for another sports thing. And it just sucked. I blame myself partially for why I suck at painting, because I loved painting. It was one of my favorite mediums, actually, at the time. I loved painting. My drawing 2 class was okay, but, like, knowing that every day I'd have to just sit there with a bunch of people who didn't care, who wouldn't do their work, who would use the time to do their homework, who would throw in half-made paintings and then have them put next to ours that we actually worked hard on, that we actually spent weeks working on, that we actually took hard time trying to match our focus, had to be on the wall together. That was another thing that really sucked, was like, because our art teacher would hang up our art, and it used to be like, by grade. So it would be like, oh, here are the first years, here are the second years, here are the third years, here are the AP students in the last years, so you can see as you take the art class how much better you get if you keep doing it. And that was always so fun and inspiring. That year, no, it was first years, second years, third years, and then our fourth years, where it was like the fourth years looked like fucking kindergartners were in the class, because we got people who would throw in half-finished paintings. Or I remember there was a guy at my table once. He was a pretty fun guy to talk to, but he just took the color blue and just painted an entire sheet of paper blue. Just one coat, blue. And then he took some red paint and put a dot in the middle, like a really tiny dot in the middle. And she had to hang that up next to one of the kids who actually fucking tried. And oh my God, I still remember this painting. This focus was so cool. It was one of those really warped photos, but it was a flower piece, and I remember she had spent like literally 2 months on it because it was huge. And then here it is next to this blue piece of paper with a red dot on it. And it made a lot of us fucking angry. And from what I know, it got resolved only because more kids became interested in the arts. From what I last heard from my high school, it hasn't changed. It hasn't gotten better. I mean, I guess it got better because more people are taking art classes, but like, yeah, that's why when I hear people who are like, oh, I'm in an animation class, I'm into this, be very, very grateful, guys, you have those opportunities. Because I'm not even that old. I'm turning 26 this year, you know? And it's drastic how much time can change. And yeah, that's my story. That was my senior year. Because, yeah, with everything else going on, that was the last thing I wanted to do or take time worrying about. So I graduated by not trying in my AP art class, which kind of sucked. I did try in my studio, though, and my drawing. So that's some good role model advice. But, yeah. From what I know, though, the principal eventually retired, and I don't know if Mrs. Hipster is still there. I hope she is, because she was a good teacher. Anyway, I'm rambling. So, as always, guys, I'll see you next time. Bye!